Hello and welcome to another Explorer video here in the Pioneer Masters preview event. So thanks again to Wizards for having me. Today we're taking a look at a blue, black and green or sultai colored graveyard deck trying to cheat Atraxa into play as early as turn 3 thanks to Neoform and now the many 6-mana delve creatures that we have access to in Explorer. So Neoform sacrifices a creature to search our library for a creature with that same mana value +1 and then put it in play with an additional +1/+1 counter. So if we sacrifice a 6-drop, we'll get to search up a 7-drop, but these 6-mana creatures we can cast for just 1 or 2 mana by exiling enough cards from our graveyard through the delve mechanic. So the game plan's just to initially fill our graveyard, then cast either Tasigur or Hooting Mandrills for Trampler, and then a Neoform to get Atraxa, which when it enters can provide a ton of card advantage, finding various cards from different card types, and then an 8/8 Flying Vigilance, Death Touch, and Lifelink, thanks to that +1 counter, is also usually good enough to win the game, especially when we find some cheap interaction like Fatal Push for removal. We've got Thoughtseize for hand disruption, and then a Stubborn Denial, also very important as a 1-mana counter spell for non-creature spells. So we can cast this early just to counter unless the opponent pays 1, but once we have a creature with power 4 or greater to enable Ferocious, then this will turn into a hard counter, so it's also perfect alongside Tasigur and Hooting Mandrills, which both have 4 power. Tasigur also has an activated ability, which mills 2, and then our opponent gets to choose a non-land card from our graveyard to put in our hand. Can be useful in grindier matchups, so always need to keep an eye on which cards to keep in the graveyard, because we're also playing Founding the Third Path, which can start from any chapter. Maybe we have a 1 or 2 mana spell we want to cast for free, so we start from chapter 1, or we want to delay getting to chapter 3, which can also be important to make sure you time out your Neoform. Then on chapter 2 we mill 4 cards, so perfect for enabling our delve creatures, and then finally we get to exile an instant or sorcery from our graveyard, copy it, and cast the copy. Now this is not optional, so we have to be careful that this doesn't somehow mess up our graveyard synergies by exiling 1 extra instant or sorcery from our graveyard, but it also allows us to maybe get back a Neoform from the graveyard if we happened to mill it. So that's why it can sometimes be important to start from chapter 1 even though you're not using it, just to give yourself more time to cast the delve creatures, and then once you get to chapter 3 you can actually exile a Neoform and cast it getting Atraxa, as opposed to having to exile it without a creature in play. And then Whale of the Forgotten is also quite flexible, can be a bounce spell, can make the opponent discard a card, or we can look at the top 3 cards of our library, putting 1 of them into our hand and the rest in the graveyard. It's another great way to fill the graveyard for delve, and also a potential removal spell we can get back with Founding the Third Path, so it has that going for it. And then Otherworldly Gaze can be cast and flashed back to Surveil 3, also quickly filling the graveyard for us and maybe keeping a Neoform on the top of our deck. Also still good alongside Founding, because we can Surveil, keep a useful card on top, and then we'll draw it before getting to chapter 2 to mill 4 cards, so it's not a nombo keeping a good card on top with the Surveil. And then the mana base has lots of dual lands. We've got a relatively low land count, so it needs all our lands to make multiple colors for the most part. 1 basic in case we need to search it up. Boseiju can also be useful at destroying opposing enchantments, for instance, and we can also maybe get the discount from controlling a legendary creature. And then we've got a mix of shock lands and fast lands mostly, as well as Mana Confluence to occasionally hardcast Atraxa, so we also have that white mana, plus it's another versatile land to cast all our various 1-drops. And yeah, that's pretty much the deck, so let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Yorion, so probably a Niv 2 light deck. We've got a Keeper, just need to find black mana. With Gaze we've got a good shot, and then Whale fills the graveyard for Tasigur, which sets up Neoform. Don't have any disruption. Thoughtseize and Stubborn Denial are both useful in this matchup. And found a black mana. Do I want Founding? I guess I do. And then I can wait on Darkslick Shore, since I could select it with the Whale, and then just cast Founding right away. Sure. And then I don't really need the Hooting Mandrills, I'll just grab the black source. So next turn I mill for 4, play 1 mana Tasigur, 2 mana Neoform. Assuming this Founding sticks around. Opponent taps out for Fable. And we found a Stubborn Denial, also pretty nice to have. So we could play differently, where we just play Tasigur for now, keep up Stubborn. But if there's 2 answers to Tasigur, which is not impossible with a Shaman making extra mana, then our entire game plan falls apart. So I think I do need to go for it now. And then keeping extra permanence for Whale is a thought. Maybe keep 1 Whale. And then the rest, something along these lines. Immediately Neoform. And get Atraxa. Now Atraxa, by no means game over here, but it does help. So we've got a backup Tasigur to set up. Could actually prefer Mandrill, since we only have the 1 black source. Thoughtseize as my sorcery, or I guess never mind, I want another Neoform. Stubborn Denial seems more important than Fatal Push, even though Push answers the Shaman token. And then another black source probably over Boseiju, although Boseiju has its advantages too. Yeah, maybe I can actually go with Tasigur over Mandrills if I get the Overgrown Tomb. But yeah, getting Boseiju would be good in the face of a Leyline Binding answering Atraxa. But next turn I can just set up Atraxa again, this time with Denial as backup. But this is going to be an important turn. Tap lands means at least no Bring to Light this turn. But that might be to enable Leyline Binding, although they already had all types. And a Knight of Autumn, that's fine. Does a Shaman attack and cast a 1 mana Binding is a question. It does not, so wow. So now we have double Stubborn Denial as backup, that feels great. Get an attack in. And then we can Tasigur with double Denial. I'll leave Neoform and Whale. Do I even need to keep Gaze? I guess we'll keep it as an option. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Cast it for 2 mana. That should work. Alright, pass a turn. Atraxa is bigger than Niv-Mizzet Reborn. I guess we could see something like Hostage Taker, Exile Atraxa, which is something I cannot Stubborn Denial. Cornucopia's fine. Seems a little aggressive to counter that one. Now Pillage the Bog. That one I could Stubborn Denial just because of the reason I mentioned, something like a Hostage Taker could answer Atraxa otherwise. And find another Stubborn Denial. So we should have most angles covered. Now I guess Reflection copying Knight of Autumn is still kind of a combo, but opponent's gonna chump. Because they have to. And a tap land seems fine. Can double Stubborn Denial and Flashback Gaze. Untap land would let me maybe activate Tasigur and keep up Stubborn Denial. Tasigur's activation, by the way, also a reason to kinda think twice about which cards to leave in your graveyard. Opponent makes an extra Shaman. And Sunfall. Alright, so definitely gonna counter that one. Still could see an attack, but we don't. And then no real need to Flashback Gaze, this is an attack for lethal. Alright, definitely got fortunate to dodge an answer to Atraxa that one turn. Could have potentially played it slightly differently, but I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We've got a couple ways to fill the graveyard, although problem is no blue mana, so I can't actually Founding into Whale. Otherwise his hand would have been ideal with Mandrills into Neoform, but we'll have to mulligan. Alright, so not quite as exciting as our previous hands, but we'll try it out. Got some good interaction with Thoughtseize and Stubborn Denial. And then we'll just need to find a 6-drop to Neoform. Right, there's our Hooting Mandrills, so problem solved. And our opponent on mono black looks like a Devotion deck, perhaps, playing the new Urborg. So, Go for the Throat probably the biggest problem, even though we can eventually Stubborn Denial it. I guess never mind, Timuret's also a big problem since that's graveyard hate. Although how actively is our opponent going to be using it is a question. Yeah, I guess we'll take Timuret still. At least with Stubborn Denial we have a decent answer to Go for the Throat. Should be able to outrace a Pack Rat. Especially with Whale bouncing a token and now Fatal Push as well. So yeah, could just push. Probably no real reason to keep up Stubborn, might as well save myself 2 damage. And then next turn we can Whale. And then do it now before they get to make an extra Pack Rat. Because I do want to use Whale to fill the graveyard as much as possible. Ayara, I would not have been able to Stubborn Denial. Alright, so could be in a bit of trouble here. Found a land. Problem is if I play Mandrills, our opponent can take it out next turn, so we needed 1 more mana to keep up Stubborn Denial. But next turn we can Mandrills into Neoform, get an Atraxa, that sort of helps. Talent resolves, gets Mandrills. So at least we're not facing a Shieldred quite yet. Opponent levels up. Okay, so play Mandrills, and then I could immediately Neoform, or I could keep up Stubborn Denial. Cannot quite Mandrills, Neoform, and Denial to protect Atraxa, so maybe that's the play, just play the Mandrills for now, and then next turn I'll be able to get Atraxa and protect it. Sure. So I need to exile 4 cards. It doesn't matter if I keep Atraxa or not. I guess we want to keep permanence for Descent, but we also have Founding Third Path. So I'll keep maybe Fatal Push there. Alright. And then I'll play the Shore since we could probably use the extra mana once refueling with Atraxa. So our opponent has to decide, goes for Go for the Throat. Now if they have a second one, we're in trouble. And wow, if they actually do. Ooh, Fatal Push is not quite gonna work, since it is a 6-drop. So that one did not quite work out for them, luckily for us. If it was a second Go for the Throat, that could have been bad. So get in for 4, Neoform, and get Atraxa. And hopefully find some goodies. Alright, so we've got Thoughtseize for Shieldreds, another Mandrills as our creature, Founding our enchantments, grab an untapped land, and an instant. Not bad. So we can Thoughtseize. And do have to be a little bit mindful of my life total, but I can cast another Hooting Mandrills here, cleaning out most of my graveyard. And that's probably good enough for now. And leaving maybe a whale in the graveyard. Or we could leave Neoform, so I can Neoform and get another Atraxa using Founding. So we do have a bit of flexibility. Pack Rat is probably going to be too slow to win them the game, but it is decent with Ayara, I suppose. Alright, let's get this juicy attack in. And then don't have to get another Atraxa right away. Although I would like to maybe find another Stubborn Denial. Just to make sure nothing bad happens. So I'll immediately get the Neoform. And get Atraxa. And there's a Stubborn Denial, now Tasigur, Boseiju, and Thoughtseize. Okay, and then I guess with an Urborg in play, Breeding Pool might have been better. Pass a turn with Stubborn Denial available. Could Boseiju the Bandit's Talent as well for 1 mana. And then Atraxa should be lethal. Opponent makes another Pack Rat, triggers Ayara. Can sack to draw, but not sure a 1 mana card is going to save them. They needed both a discard spell for Stubborn Denial and then a removal for Atraxa. And yeah, now we can still Boseiju if we'd like. And then Tasigur is ready to make an appearance, but yeah, we'll just put our opponent out of their misery. Sweet. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. What do we think of our hand? We've got a Gaze and Founding to quickly fill the graveyard to enable Mandrills. So we're just missing a Neoform, pretty much. Yeah, I'll give it a try. We're not packing much interaction. Now Stubborn Denial is decent, since I can maybe counter their play, and then untap Founding, casting Gaze for free. So I actually don't hate countering their Consider here. Even though if they're on like a Phoenix deck, it's possible I could maybe counter an Artist's Talent on turn 2. Yeah, speak of the devil. But I wasn't entirely sure what deck they were playing. But yeah, I'll Founding, start from chapter 1. Still happy to just fill the graveyard as much as possible. Second Talent. This might actually be a Lotus Field combo deck as opposed to Izzet Phoenix, so milling the opponent not as bad here, although our opponent's eventual win condition is Thassa's Oracle. Still want to mill myself. Had I milled a Neoform, it would have also been set up with Chapter 3. And now we're just looking at Hooting Mandrills, and then maybe another Founding, just to speed things up, or I can flash back, Gaze, and still play 1 mana Mandrills. What's better? Yeah, I guess we'll flash back. Alright, so Atraxa I don't need. Stubborn Denial against the Lotus Field deck, so they already have Lotus Field in play. I mean, both Thoughtseize and Stubborn Denial are eventually cards I would like. But if I don't get a Neoform going, I don't think Mandrills, even 2 of them, are going to be good enough. Although maybe I'm selling the Mandrills short. Yeah, so let's say we next turn just get back Thoughtseize with Founding, play Mandrills and keep up Stubborn Denial, that's pretty good. And then on the following turn I can Founding again, maybe casting a free Thoughtseize and take it from there. So exile 5 cards, don't need Atraxa, land, Tasigur, Stubborn Denial, something along these lines. Want to keep spells for Founding to maybe get back with Chapter 3. And at the same time we also want to keep permanents to enable the Descend on Whale of the Forgotten. So our opponent's already making 1 extra mana here, cycling through the deck. Ditching a Lightning Strike, not quite capable of answering the Mandrills. So our opponent is seeing a lot of cards. And they found Thespian Stage to make a second Lotus Field. And can they still combo here with the Hidden Strings, maybe? Untap both Lotus Fields would be strong. Looks like they're maybe delving for a dig through time. Alright, so they will have a pretty full grip next turn. But at least for now, they won't be able to keep comboing. And then we'll get to Thoughtseize them and keep up Stubborn Denial, which is hopefully enough to keep them off balance. Alright, so get back Thoughtseize, cast it. And our opponent's got double Hidden Strings, Pour, and Leer. So we want to counter Pour Over the Pages with Stubborn Denial, Thoughtseize the Leer, and then Hidden Strings making mana. Still good, but if you're not drawing additional cards, it doesn't matter as much. The plan is still to play second Mandrills, and then I'll have exactly 1 mana left for Stubborn Denial. Opponent leveling up Artist's Talent. Hidden Strings resolves. Level up Talent again. 5 mana. And Hidden Strings 4 mana floating. Resolves. Really important that I counter Pour Over the Pages here, but I'll let them discard first so they have less information. So our opponent kept 1 good card in hand, which could be another Pour Over the Pages for all we know, but yeah, I have to counter this, I think. And hope their last card's not a good one. Bond of Insight, pretty good. So now they get back Pour Over the Pages ×2, and they should be able to keep comboing here. So yeah, we were just 1 piece of interaction short. And yeah, I guess with a leveled up Talents, they would have been able to cast Pour Over the Pages for 4 mana had I countered the second Hidden Strings. So I don't think there was really any spot where we could have fizzled them out. Or we just let Pour Over the Pages resolve and hope that our opponent doesn't amass enough resources, but that seems unlikely. So yeah, opponent's just going to keep milling and drawing, and eventually Thassa's Oracle is going to win them the game. So yeah. We almost managed to get there. Next turn we would Founding, can immediately get back Thoughtseize, while we have them on a 2-turn clock. But yeah, maybe waiting to counter an Artist's Talent would have worked out better, as opposed to just countering the Consider. So now both Blue-Red Phoenix and the Blue-Red Lotus Field deck packing Artist's Talent. So they're down to 11 cards. They might have Wish to get Thassa's Oracle out of the sideboard. Not sure if they have Thassa's Oracle in the main deck. But yeah, opponent's got all the resources they need. And there we also see Expedition Map, which powers up this Blue-Red's Lotus Field deck, since it means you no longer need green for Sylvan's Crying or for the triple green instant to get your Lotus Fields and Thespian's stages. So their opponent's just drawing through the deck, 1 card left, so Thassa's Oracle is game here. Opponent wishes. Luckily for them, it is optional to draw with Artist's Talent, and it's not mandatory, and there's Thassa's Oracle to win the game. On to the next one. Facing Yorion, so likely another Nif to Light deck. Don't love having Atraxa in our opener. Just missing a 6-mana creature to set up Neoform, and Gaze can help us find it, so I'll try. And then we get to keep up both the Gaze and Stubborn Denial. And look for Tasigur and Hooting Mandrills. Probably see a tap land here. Yep. Alright, found the Mandrills, although once again another Atraxa, so that's not ideal. There's only one Atraxa left in the deck for Neoform to find now. So we'll just flash back the Gaze. And then next turn we're good to set up Neoform. Opponent is missing Island, so they won't be able to play 1-mana Leyline Binding to interfere. Another Stubborn Denial. So yeah, kind of need to put everything in graveyard here if I want to immediately get Atraxa. I could also play it slow, play Mandrills, keep up Stubborn Denial, and then next turn Neoform, keep up Stubborn Denial. I guess I could keep one other Denial on top. Or even a Thoughtseize, but I feel like Denial's actually better. And then I can still play Mandrills for 2 mana and keep up Denial. Yeah, that's gonna be good enough. Alright, let's see what's next. Hopefully not 2 removal spells. Alright, Vanishing Verse will counter if they also have... I guess again they cannot cast a 1-mana Binding, so that's gonna work. Now we get to attack. Neoform, get Atraxa, and have Denial as backup, which is huge. Our last Atraxa. And find Thoughtseize. Fatal Push can still be useful against a Shaman token. Mandrills is our creature. Untapped lands. And enchantments. And then I could still Thoughtseize here. We are dealing ourselves a lot of damage, but hopefully we'll make up for it next turn. And then here, nothing really matters. Probably the Sunfall. Although I would love for my opponent to tap out for a 5-drop. And this is a 2-turn clock with 2 hard counters in hand. So they'll need something special. Opponent puts Yorion in hands. Hit you for 8. And then can play the Mandrills, keep up double Stubborn Denial, I suppose. So if they play Yorion just to chump Atraxa, we can still bounce it with Whale. So they should be dead pretty much no matter what. Can't think of any uncounterable removal that deals with a 7-mana Atraxa. Abrupt Decay only hits permanents with mana value 3 or less. So yeah, even though we had the option of getting Atraxa in play on turn 3, I'm glad we waited here. And Deafening Clarion is fine. And a Lightning Helix we can counter. Alright, sweet. And an attack for 12. So yeah, as I was saying, even though we could have Neoformed on turn 3, I think sometimes in matchups like these, where your opponents might have removal for Atraxa, it can be worth waiting one extra turn just to set up Atraxa with Stubborn Denial backup, although you don't always have that luxury. Okay, we're on the draw, and we seem to have most of the pieces we need. Founding to fill the graveyard, to enable Mandrills and Tasigur to come down cheaply, and then Neoform to get Atraxa. Opponent on what looks to be a Lotus Field combo deck. So it's all about speed in this matchup, getting our threats in play quickly, and then hopefully finding the right disruption, Thoughtseize and Stubborn Denial. Next turn I will be forced to exile a card with Founding, probably get rid of the Neoform, and we get an enchantment in the graveyard, so I will be able to cast one of my 6-drops. And their opponent gets their signature card in play. 2 mana floating. So they could already untap Lotus Fields to make an extra mana. And our opponent taps her Founding as well to cast Vizier. Alright, I might actually play to our advantage, since by sacrificing Founding here, we enabled Revolt on Fatal Push, so we get to push Vizier in a turn where I wouldn't have been able to play a 6-drop and Neoform anyway. And then do we have a preference? I don't think our opponent's likely to have interaction, so in that case, I guess sacking Tasigur is probably better, because it's a legend. And then what do we keep in the graveyard? Probably the Gaze. Okay, so next turn I can get Atraxa, and then have mana left over for some of our interaction. All their opponents got a Thespian Stage to copy Lotus Fields, so next turn they could already combo off. Alright, Thoughtseize is a good start. Get our attack in first. And then Atraxa likely to find us an extra land as well. So I can still maybe Thoughtseize and Stubborn Denial. Alright, did not find Denial, but we can Thoughtseize twice, which is good enough. And then do I even want Atraxa in hand? I don't think so, because then I wouldn't be able to Neoform for another one. So we'll just grab a Tasigur. Ooh, never mind. I shouldn't have gotten Breeding Pool. Could have gotten another Mana Confluence to Thoughtseize twice. Yeah, I thought it didn't matter, in which case Breeding Pool might be the better long-term plan. Okay, our opponent's got 2 win conditions in hand, but no way to untap Lotus Field to generate extra mana. So best they can do is either Archer's Charm to get another Thespian stage, or Sylvan's Crying. So at that point I can take their win conditions. And then Gaze can maybe dig towards a Stubborn Denial. Opponent drew Thespian stage off the top. So they now have 7 mana to peer into the Abyss. But they would just lose the game to an Atraxa attack if they do. So instead, they're probably just going to set up for next turn. Yeah, I took the Emergent Ultimatum because if they did find a way to generate extra mana, it's potentially this carrier of the 2 cards if our opponent can cast it. I guess our opponent's searching maybe a creature like Vizier, which can untap Lotus Fields, or Fae of Wishes can get a card out of the sideboard. Alright, so opponents just got triple Lotus Field, so they're ready to combo next turn. But hopefully we'll find more disruption. So any reason to keep these? Founding is basically another Thoughtseize. Not as good as Stubborn Denial, but it's not the worst. Could take Fae of Wishes and peer into the Abyss, and basically leave them top decking. So I guess that's good enough. So Thoughtseize. Attack. And we have a 2-turn clock, so that lines up perfectly. And then Founding immediately going to Chapter 3. And Thoughtseize you again. Yeah, in this spot, Stubborn Denial is much better, because we force our opponent to commit a bunch of mana to casting their 7 mana spell, and then counter it for just 1 mana. But in this case, our opponent didn't top deck, and Atraxa will get the job done. Alright, so we get to Neoform into Atraxa on turn 3 on a few occasions, and that's usually good enough to win the game, and then our backup plan of beating down with Tasigur and Hooting Mandrills is usually good enough too, so I'm pretty happy with how the deck performed. Of course, not the most versatile deck when it comes to best of 3, because we do rely pretty heavily on the graveyard, so any graveyard hate can significantly slow us down, or other ways that the opponent might have to prevent us from casting our Neoform. So by no means a perfect strategy, but if you enjoy graveyard strategies trying to cast big expensive creatures, this deck might be for you. So that'll do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.